All right, first up on our underrated list, we have a couple fairy cards. Herald of the Green Light. So obviously you're already running in either Fairy Sworn or Pure Fairies, you're running Herald of the Orange Light for monsters. Obviously that's the best one. But I feel like most of the time you're siding Decree in against trap decks, meaning Decree is going to stop all of the traps. Herald of the Orange Light is going to stop all of the monster effects you don't want. So you're really only worried at that point about Heavy Storm, MST on the Decree. You're worried about, Smashing Ground on Christia. You're worried about, Soul Release. You're only worried about a few cards left that you can't already answer. So currently testing Herald of the Orange Light, Herald of the Green Light in Fairy Sworn. You can get it back with Beckoning Light. The only downside here is that it's not a tuner. But I definitely feel like it is super unexplored in those fairy lists, and definitely deserves some more lookbacks. All right, moving on to Azura Priest. Same thing in fairies. Honestly, either list. Obviously, in Fairy Sworn, it's a little bit better because you can Beckoning Light stuff back. In case you don't know how Azura Priest works with Honest, if you attack a monster and drop Honest on the first monster, Honest obviously keeps the buff until the end of the turn. So Azura Priest can attack all of your opponent's monsters with that buffed attack. So imagine you're playing, Disaster Dragons, and they have, 3 red MDs and a White Knight and something else, right? You can attack the White Knight, drop an Honest, it's, 4,700 at that point now, and attack every one of their other monsters with 4,700 attack. Pretty good. It's also good against frogs, ironically in the opposite direction. The fact that it's a spirit monster means you can summon it, attack directly, or attack whatever, right? And then it bounces back during the end phase, so it kind of stops them from looping monarchs. Not to mention just the fact that you can kind of reuse it. It's good against recruiters. It's good against a lot of stuff in fairies. Next up, Prohibition. I think this card is super helpful, especially against some of those really obvious decks like frogs, like Blackwings, right? Blackwings, for example, right? When you're playing against Blackwings, you know how to play against that deck if you're in Edison format. You know that, if they top deck Blizzard here, I'm screwed. If they have Kalut in their hand, I'm screwed here. So against decks like that, where you can pretty much call, okay, if they have this card, I lose, right? And a lot of situations that Mind Crush would be good in, right? Prohibition is great. It just stops the one card you don't want to see. And obviously sometimes that's more than one card. And unfortunately, you kind of have to just hedge your bets, right? But depending on what you're playing against, you decide this in against Blackwings, you go first, you could either hold it for that top deck card, or you could just immediately call Whirlwind, call Icarus attack, right? Before they even have a chance to set those cards. It just seems like in those matchups that it's really good. Next up is Fiend Comedian. So we saw this have some success in Nats with the Amaryllis list. Fiend Comedian is pretty crazy. I actually played it at Nats with Lightsworn because it's kind of just like a win-win, kind of like it is with Amaryllis, right? Worst case scenario, right? You call it wrong and you mill a bunch of cards. So you're running Necrogardna, you're running Plague Spreader, you're running obviously the Amaryllis package, you're running Lightsworns with Wolves, you're running, Vayus and Sirokkos, right? It's a benefit most of the time when you're milling a bunch of cards. If you chain it to a Miracle Fusion and you call it right, their Miracle Fusion fizzles because they have no graveyard. They have to fuse with the field if that's all that they have left. So you have a lot of different situations where this card can be surprisingly crazy good. And obviously, the better your deck mills, the better your deck has good mill targets, the better this card is going to be, and the more use it's going to see. But mainly, it's just kind of a really crazy quick DD Crow your opponent doesn't see coming. All right, next up, Ultimate Offering. So this card has seen a lot of success recently in Zombies. It kind of lets you unbrick some of your hands. Zombies is really reliant on setting cards and your opponent attacking your sets. So it's really cool to be able to, instead of set Pyramid Turtle, hope they kill it, go into Goblin Zombie, summon Diva, go off. You can kind of just summon Diva, special another Diva, pay 5, summon Goblin Zombie, right? It also unbricks a lot of Ill Blood hands, so pretty good in Zombies, right? It's also seeing play in that Gemini deck, which I still don't know if it's a real deck or not, but obviously it's very normal summon reliant, and you need to summon Geminis with it, which is an additional normal summon. But I think it would show a lot of promise in like Blackwings and some other decks as well. Think about Blackwings is really susceptible to Bottomless Trap Hole Torrential kind of ending their entire turn, right? So if you have like, Shura, Bora, whatever, right? You can go Shura, get Bottomless, and then just pay 5 normal, summon the Bora, and continue on with the rest of your turn. Tuner's Scheme. Okay, this is a really cool side deck card. It's just very niche, right? So Tuner's Scheme specifically steals a Synchro, right? So in a lot of decks, this is not going to be super helpful. Like Frog's not going to be super helpful, right? But in certain decks, right, you go against Vayu Turbo especially, right? You take their Synchro, they go, it doesn't say Synchro summoned, it says when a Synchro monster is special summoned in any way, right? So if they go like Vayu Sirocco Armed Wing, right, you go Tuner Scheme, take it. When this card is destroyed, the monster is banished, so they kind of don't get the Armed Wing back, right? So it seems pretty good. It also seems like it'd be pretty good against like purely synchro decks, like Zombies, for example. Zombies goes into their Bryo play where they don't get priority because they search with Goblin Zombie. You can just take the Bryonic and it kind of ends their turn right there. So a lot of cool stuff with Tuner Scheme. Dark Illusion. So this is a card that I saw in a list recently for Blackwings a couple weeks back, and this card just seems really cool, right? Caius is super prevalent in the format, Deep Prison's super prevalent in the format, so if you're running a dark deck such as Vayu Turbo, Blackwings, right? A lot of times your opponent is going to Caius your monster, right? They're going to, obviously, Deep Prison can only hit a monster, but there's a lot of cards that target Dark Arm Dragon. They're going to Dark Arm Dragon the monster because they don't want to Dark Arm Dragon a Bottomless and then, lose the Dark Arm Dragon for no reason, right? So if you run stuff like Vayu Turbo, Blackwings, stuff like that, right? Mostly dark heavy decks, it's almost like a pseudo pulling the rug in that it's really great against Caius, which is in most decks, but it's also great against like every other targeting thing in the game. It just seems like it's super cool counter trap, so you can't really out it, and just seems like a really cool tech card in dark decks. All right, so I know what you're gonna say here. How the hell is Starlight Road underrated? So I think this is like the biggest 50-50 card in the format, right? This card is both the most overrated card and the most underrated card, depending on your preference as a player, right? So as Fraser Smith was saying recently in a video, if you have Heavy Storm and your opponent has a bunch of back rows, you're going to heavy, right? And hopefully they don't have road. But a lot of times, since so few decks run Starlight Road, unless you see a Starlight Road, you don't respect it. You're going to heavy 2 back rows, right? You're going to Mirror Force 2 monsters. You're going to Torrential 2 or 3 monsters, right? So I think this card is underrated in that so many people either completely play around it and like fear it really hardcore, or the other half, which I fall into this camp, just completely ignore that it's a real card unless you see it. So I think if more people were to start playing it, it would maybe change that narrative and it might change. But as it stands right now, this card is like super underrated. No one's gonna expect it.